Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPad mini 7th generation and compare it against the iPad 9th generation and see which particular iPad is a better one for you. Now, definitely in my personal opinion, when it comes down to both of these, I do think both these are very, very good. They have a lot of capability, lots of quality, but I don't know if there's one that, clearly the iPad mini 7 is the way better one here, but the iPad 9, I would still say for the quality and for the capability that you're getting, it's still a very good performing tablet as well. So I'll go and hit on all these throughout this whole entire video, but if at any point you want to go and pick up either one of these particular tablets, the links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these particular devices. On the outside of this particular device, on the iPad 9th generation, this tablet came out about 3 years ago, so back in 2021, and this was, in my opinion, still a very good iPad in a lot of different ways. So in this one, you're getting a 10.2 inch, Retina display. So this thing was a much bigger panel for the most part than the iPad mini 7. It still is a very good looking display, though I think this type of tablet does a really good job for the most part of I like a majority of things that you end up throwing at it. And I definitely do like having an iPad like this because it's a big display, home button on the front, pretty big bezels around it. Not the worst looking panel of all time, and I still think it's a good looking device for the most part, but definitely it's not the best looking panel. It could definitely have some improvements here and there, and there's a lot of bezel around it compared to a lot of the competition. Now, when compared to something like the iPad mini 7, this is definitely a smaller tablet. So this one on the iPad mini 7 is basically giving you, it's a 8.3 inch liquid retina display. So this one is noticeably smaller, so that is one thing to keep in mind there. On top of that, it's definitely not the best looking panel either, to be honest. They're both, 60 Hz panels, so there's not really many improvements there. But I would still say in a lot of ways, it still is a pretty good looking device, right? Both of these, I think, perform fairly well for the most part, and there isn't really massive things to complain about here in my personal opinion. But there obviously are some things where they could have done a better job here. But it has less bezels on it. It has, more, screen real estate if you kind of think about it from that way. And I definitely do think it's a very good looking device on the iPad mini 7, and I think it is probably the better looking one. And you're also getting the anti-reflective coating on the iPad mini 7 as well, which is another really nice thing. So when it comes down to that, I would probably say the iPad mini 7 kind of wins on the front, but the iPad 9th generation is still a very good iPad when it comes down to it as well. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here too is that with the iPad mini 7, it's giving you flat sides around it and a much more modern feeling build, whereas on the iPad mini 7, it has flat sides on it, which is way more modern compared to any other device from today's standards. So I think that in and of itself is a very important thing to keep in mind. You're going to be getting a device that is going to perform at a better level, I would say, on something like the iPad mini 7, and you're getting USB Type-C on the iPad mini 7 as well, which that in and of itself is another very big difference, right? Having USB Type-C, I would say, is a very, very big advantage, and that is in and of itself one of the bigger assets, I would say, for a device like the iPad mini 7. Now, on top of that, another very big thing going on here too is that with something like the iPad mini 7, it's giving you a flat side, same thing with the iPad 9. It's giving you single camera setups on the back side as well, which I still think hold up fairly well for the most part. Not anything super crazy, but I still think they did a pretty good job with it. And on top of that, it is giving you a pretty good, capable device, right? There's not really too many things on the iPad mini 7 that I look at and I'm complaining about. And it is overall probably the better one than the iPad, 9th generation. So from that side, I think that kind of covers it up there. Now, when it comes down to the price tag side, the iPad mini 7 is about $679. The iPad 9 is basically, it's not really being sold in the brand new market anymore, but I'm sure you can pick up that device for substantially cheaper, probably maybe $200, maybe less than $200 at this point, which is actually a pretty fair deal for that type of device if I'm being honest. So from that side as well, I would say definitely from a price tag standpoint, the iPad mini 7 is more expensive, but it's not the biggest deal in the world by anyways. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there too a little bit. Now on top of that, another very big thing is when it comes down to the cameras. So on the back side, you're basically getting a single camera setup on both. A big thing to keep in mind here though is that with the iPad mini 7, you're getting that 12 megapixel wide angle camera. The iPad 9, you're getting an 8 megapixel wide angle camera. So they're basically almost the same kind of layout when it comes down to that side. One big thing to kind of keep in mind though is that with something like the iPad mini 7, you are getting the same front-facing camera as well. So it's the same 12 megapixel front-facing camera. You're getting center stage, which is nice. you are getting 4K video on the iPad mini 7, whereas on the iPad 9, I keep calling iPad mini 9, iPad 9, you're getting 1080p video. So that is a little bit of a difference there too. If you're wanting the better device here with the better camera, you could make the argument here that it is probably going to be something like the iPad mini 7. On top of that, you're also getting flash on the back of the iPad mini 7 as well, which is an advantage there. It is really nice having flash capability, and you are essentially going to be getting that on the iPad mini 7, which that in and of itself is going to be another really cool thing going on for that type of device as well. So from that side too, that kind of covers it up there as well. Now in terms of software longevity, meaning which one's going to be the longer lasting phone here, I would probably go off on a limb and say that something like the iPad mini 7 is probably going to be the substantially longer lasting device here in probably every single way. So if we're talking about which device is going to be getting the longer lasting device, in my personal opinion, it's quite clearly going to be something like the iPad mini 7. It has a newer chipset, it's going to be a longer lasting device, and that's probably what's going to end up happening here. So I think that's a good thing. I think that's a really good thing going on for these devices, and there's not really like an insane amount of things to complain about there from that side, just because, if you're getting a longer lasting phone, that tends to be kind of a nicer thing. So that in and of itself is kind of one big thing to kind of keep in mind there as well. Now beyond that, another very big thing to keep in mind there too is when it comes down to the batteries. So the battery of something like the iPad mini 7 is actually probably not going to last as long as something like the iPad mini 9. So if you were somebody who wanted to get a longer lasting device here once again, it probably is going to be something like the iPad mini 7 or iPad 9. So if you're wanting the longer lasting device, the iPad 9 is probably going to be the one that's going to be giving you the longer lasting device here. So I think that in and of itself, once again, is another very big asset for that type of phone when it comes down to it as well. Now, on top of those things, when it comes down to the performance, the iPad mini 7 is basically giving you that Apple A17 Pro chip inside with 8GB of RAM, where the iPad 9 generation is giving you the A13 Bionic chip inside of it. So you're getting more RAM inside of the iPad, so you're getting more RAM inside of the iPad mini 9. So you're getting more RAM inside of the iPad mini 7, and you're also getting, a better chipset inside of the iPad mini 7 as well. So if it comes down to kind of which one is a better performing device here, quite clearly in almost every single way, it's going to be the iPad mini 7. This one is going to be the one that's going to be giving you a better looking display, better performing display. And if we're talking about which one's going to be the better one here, almost in every single way, the phone that's going to be giving you the better experience is probably going to be something like the iPad, mini 7. You're also getting Apple Intelligence inside of that device too, and we all know how much Apple's going to be focusing in on Apple Intelligence as basically the future. That's what Apple's saying. So I think that in and of itself is another big thing to kind of keep in mind there as well. So all in all, to kind of sum up this whole entire comparison, I look at a device like the iPad mini 7, and I do think this is the overall better one in almost every single way. If we're still taking a look at which one's going to be the biggest one of all time, the best one right now, it is probably going to be the iPad mini 7 when it basically comes down to this particular device, right? When it comes down to the difference between these two, the iPad mini 7 I think is a better one here, but the iPad 9 also is a much cheaper iPad. It's going to be bringing a lot of stuff to the table, and I definitely do think an iPad like the iPad 9th generation is still a very, very good deal too. It just so happens that the mini 7 I think is the better one from if you're not looking at the price tag. So that kind of covers it up there too. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.